The courtroom was dead silent, until the gunshot shattered the fragile calm like a hammer through glass. Pam Bondi, the iron-willed Florida prosecutor whose reputation for bulldog tenacity had struck fear into the hearts of white-collar criminals, across the state felt her pulse spike as the deafening report echoed through the cavernous chamber. Her polished leather heels clicked sharply against the marble floor as she instinctively stepped back, her trained eyes locking onto the defendant's table where Daniel Mercer, the silver-haired real estate tycoon who had charmed investors out of billions, now slumped forward in his custom Brioni suit, his once perfect coiffure matted with blood and brain matter. The acrid smell of gunpowder mixed with the metallic tang of blood filled the air as panic erupted around her, bailiffs shouting, jurors screaming, reporters scrambling for cover. But amid the chaos, Pam's razor-sharp legal mind was already dissecting the scene with clinical precision. The way Mercer's left hand had twitched toward his breast pocket seconds before the shot, the unnatural angle of his wrist as it now dangled limply over the edge of the table. And most damning of all, the absence of powder burns on his temple that should have been there from a point-blank suicide. As paramedics rushed in and the judge declared a recess, one question burned through Pam's thoughts like a branding iron. Why would a man who'd spent his entire life gaming the system suddenly choose to checkmate himself in the most permanent way possible? The deeper Pam dug, the more the pieces refused to fit together, like a jigsaw puzzle where someone had swapped pieces from different boxes. Back in her office at the state attorney's headquarters, surrounded by case files that now smelled faintly of cordite, Pam methodically reconstructed the final moments of Mercer's life frame by frame. Security footage showed him entering the courthouse that morning flanked by his high-priced legal team, his demeanor oddly calm for a man facing 25 to life. His lead attorney, the notoriously ruthless Martin Cross, had been whispering urgently in his ear during the elevator ride up, but the cameras hadn't caught audio. Then there was the gun itself, a vintage Colt 1911 that ballistics confirmed hadn't been fired in decades, its serial number filed off with professional precision. Most damning was the coroner's preliminary report. The bullet's trajectory suggested the shot had come from slightly above and behind Mercer, not the straight-on angle of a self-inflicted wound. And then there was the note. Those two cryptic words, "They know," scrawled in handwriting that trembled like a seismograph needle during an earthquake. Pam's fingers traced the indented letters on the legal pad where she'd transcribed the message, her mind racing through possibilities. Was this a confession, a warning, or the desperate last act of a man who realized too late that he'd become expendable in someone else's endgame? The case file on her desk suddenly felt less like a legal document and more like a live grenade with the pin halfway pulled. When Pam's star witness, a former Mercer Properties accountant named Luis Reyes, failed to show for his scheduled deposition, she knew instantly something was wrong. Reyes had been the linchpin of her case, the insider who could connect Mercer to the labyrinth of shell companies and offshore accounts. The discovery of his body floating face down in a mangrove swamp near Key Largo, his fingertips dissolved by acid in what the medical examiner called a professional signature, confirmed her darkest suspicions. Then came the break-in at her office. Nothing obvious stolen, but her computer's hard drive had been expertly wiped, and someone had gone through her case notes with surgical precision. The final straw was the text message that appeared on her burner phone at 3:17 a.m. "Stop digging or you'll end up like Mercer." The message vanished 30 seconds after she read it, leaving no trace, just like the digital footprints of whoever had sent it. Pam sat in her darkened kitchen, the glow of her laptop casting eerie shadows as she reviewed security footage from the night of the break-in. The intruders had disabled cameras with military precision, but one frame, just a single blurry image, caught a glimpse of a wrist tattoo she recognized, the distinctive coiled serpent insignia of the governor's security detail. The USB drive arrived like a ghost slipping through her mail slot. No postmark, no fingerprints, just a cheap plastic rectangle that could hold either salvation or damnation. Pam nearly jumped out of her skin when her doorbell camera alerted her to movement at 2:43 a.m. The footage showed only darkness until, for exactly 1.3 seconds, a gloved hand slid something beneath her door before disappearing back into the night. She approached the drive like it might explode, using salad tongs to deposit it into a Faraday bag before connecting it to an air-gapped laptop in her panic room, a post-break-in addition to her modest Coral Gables bungalow. The video file that opened showed Mercer, alive but clearly terrified, filmed in what looked like a cheap motel room, his usually perfect hair greasy and unkempt. "They're not just after me," he whispered, his eyes darting to something off-camera. "This goes higher than you think. The campaign donations were just the beginning. The mayor's getting kickbacks on every zoning change. The chief judge has been fixing cases for years. And the governor... Christ, the governor's been laundering cartel money through our luxury condo projects." The camera shook as a noise came from outside the room. Mercer's face went sheet white. "They're here. If you're watching this, I'm already..." The screen cut to static. Pam sat frozen, the implications detonating in her mind like a string of firecrackers. This wasn't just about Mercer's fraud case anymore. She'd stumbled into something far bigger, far darker, and infinitely more dangerous. The storm outside mirrored the tempest in Pam's mind as she stood on the rain-lashed balcony of Mercer's abandoned Palm Island mansion. Lightning forked across the night sky, illuminating the crumbling Mediterranean revival estate where Mercer had allegedly stashed his black books before his death. The place should have been crawling with cops, but Pam had come alone, save for Jack Walsh, the grizzled former Miami-Dade detective whose reputation for integrity had cost him his badge and nearly his life. Water dripped from the rotting ceiling. As they picked their way through the debris-strewn ballroom, their flashlights cutting through the gloom. Then Walsh's beam caught something odd, a section of mahogany paneling that didn't quite align. A sharp tug revealed a hidden safe room. Behind the wall, its steel door slightly ajar. Inside, they found what Mercer had died trying to protect. Ledger books detailing 20 years of payoffs, photos of judges and politicians in compromising positions, and, most chilling, a spreadsheet tracking millions in construction costs. For buildings that never existed, all routed through accounts linked to a certain governor's re-election campaign. Walsh's hand trembled as he flipped through the pages. "This isn't just prison time, Pam," he muttered. "This is a death warrant for everyone who touches it." As if on cue, headlights sliced through the rain outside. Pam barely had time to shove the documents into her waterproof case before the first bullet shattered the window. The firefight that followed would later be described in police reports as an exchange of gunfire between unknown parties. Pam and Walsh took cover behind an overturned billiards table as automatic weapons fire chewed through the mansion's antique woodwork. Through the smoke and flying plaster, Pam caught glimpses of their attackers. Professional hitters dressed in black tactical gear, their faces obscured by balaclavas. Walsh's old service revolver barked twice, dropping one assailant with a perfect double tap to the chest. Pam, a reluctant but competent shot from her days as a junior prosecutor in Tampa, picked off another with a lucky shot through a gap in his body armor. They fought their way to the boat dock behind the property, the documents clutched to Pam's chest like a holy relic. As Walsh gunned the outboard motor, and they skimmed across the churning bay, tracer rounds streaked overhead, like angry fireflies. Only when they reached the relative safety of Walsh's fishing shack on Key Biscayne did they dare examine their prize, and found the smoking gun, a video showing the governor himself accepting a briefcase of cash from a known cartel lieutenant, with Mercer standing nervously in the background. The timestamp placed it 3 days before Mercer's arrest. The press conference the next morning would go down in Florida political history as the Scarlet Monday Massacre. Pam stood at the podium in the state attorney's office, her navy blue power suit a stark contrast to the flashing cameras and shouted questions. Beside her, federal prosecutors from the Southern District looked on grimly as she methodically laid out the evidence, the ledgers, the videos, The forensic accounting that traced the money trail straight to the governor's offshore accounts. Indictments rained down like hailstones. The mayor, 3 circuit court judges, 12 police officials, and ultimately the governor himself, all charged with everything from bribery to racketeering to murder for hire. The fallout would take years to fully unravel. Elections overturned, convictions vacated, billions in ill-gotten assets seized. But as Pam walked back to her office that afternoon, the weight of the case still heavy on her shoulders, she couldn't shake the image of Mercer's terrified face in that final video. He'd been a crook, yes, but in the end, he'd tried to do the right thing, and it had cost him everything. Now as the media circus swirls around her and the political establishment reels, one haunting question remains unanswered. Who delivered that USB drive to Pam's doorstep that night? The security footage showed no identifiable features, just that gloved hand slipping the drive into her home like some modern-day deep throat. Was it a remorseful member of Mercer's organization? A disgruntled cop who'd seen too much? Or perhaps someone even higher up the food chain, playing a deeper game that Pam hasn't yet uncovered? As she stares at the corkboard in her office, photos connected by red string, timelines stretching back decades, she realizes this may only be the first thread in a much larger tapestry of corruption. What do you think? Was Mercer's death truly a suicide? Or was he executed to protect secrets that go even deeper than what Pam uncovered? Could there be another player still lurking in the shadows, waiting for their moment to strike? Drop your theories in the comments below and stay tuned, because in Florida politics, the truth is always stranger than fiction and far more dangerous.